Hi, my name is Ken Asserson. I wrote a microbiome prescription site, which over the last several years has evolved. And I figured it would be time in 2023 to do an update walkthrough of the video for people using 16S samples. I'm first going to show how to transfer data from the biome site across. Biome's site, you cannot download data from it and upload it because the download doesn't have all the information that the transfer has, and that extra information is needed. The second thing I'm going to do is show how to upload a sample from for example, Ombre Labs or some of the other ones, the same pattern, and how to do that. Then we'll look at walking into it and what you should look at the very first time in there, and do a introduction to the website walkthrough and give you a orientation to the website. So first thing is, I'm going to go in and log into the biome site. I have an account there. And voila, we are in. And now on the left side, I go down to third-party apps. I'm a third-party app. I'm the only third-party app there. Click there. They are good in terms of being willing to integrate elsewhere. So you go down to whichever sample you happen to be interested in. And for readability, I'll take one from a couple of years back. Oh, it says already sample already said that. So I'm going to go and take this one, and I'm just going to click this. You see at the top, it's spinning around. And after a few minutes, it should stop and say, data got transferred. Yes! So data got transferred across to the other side. First step, now I can log off that site and wait for an email to come. We are not using login passwords. We are using email, and we send a link to your email to authorize the login. And that way we have close to two-factor authentication, but without the hassles of having to have a phone handy, etc. The authentication goes to your email. You can keep reusing it, or you can request a new one whenever you want to and get a new key, and the old key will be disabled. So you could share your data with somebody for a length of time and then stop sharing by simply asking for a new key. Okay, so that's basically it, and I will go over and take a quick look at Ombre Labs as simply a alternative example. For method number 2, you go to Ombre Labs, you go to login, and okay, I'll go over and change it myself. Sign in. As you see, we're usually spending a fair amount of time waiting. We actually spend more time waiting on their sites than you will on my site. So interesting comment about performance. Then again, I'm a long-time performance expert, so I'm not surprised my site runs faster than their sites. So we wait, and perhaps grab a coffee, take a siesta. And we are still spinning, as you can see in the top left corner. I'm going to pause this and we'll resume when the screen changes. And as you see, we just got to the point of loading. Give it a few more seconds and let's see if it actually does load. And I have eventually successfully logged in. So that's basically how, now that I'm logged in, let's take a look at some of the things. Now, what you want to do is locate and download our CSV files. And to do that, we click Bacteria Levels, and go over here to download my data. And click here and downloads, and CSV stands for comma separated file. So I can go and do a save as, or I can do an open. If you're going to upload, make sure you do a save as. And give it a few seconds. There we go. You may want to put your name on it. And so I'll drop that. And there, I could then open the file. And because it's a comma separated value file, it will default to whatever is your reader for a CSV file, which most cases for Windows is Excel, and there you can see the information there in the file and the percentage count, etc. So that's there. You don't want to save the Excel file. Save it as an Excel file, it will change the format and uploading will be problematic. So that's basically it. You now have your file on your PC ready to do an upload. So we're over on microbiome prescription. We go to there, and in this case, the most common ones have direct links. However, there are some other ones which are there, and we'll go and take you through. But let's assume you have done one of the common ones, and we'll go down to Ombre. Bottom side is a direct transfer. Choose the file, and navigate to where you store it. Here it is, and see my name is in the front of it. Click that. There, I need to add my name here, so I'll just type in my the email I want to make use of. Generally, it's a good thing if you bounce between the Ombre site and the bottom site. Make sure you use the same email. It just makes life a lot easier. Click upload and consent, and then it will read the file, upload it. It will do some preliminary analysis of it, and then populate it. This is usually faster than trying to log into Ombre Labs. There we go. And the message you saw on screen was a message saying, hey, got your data, and now I'm doing an extra set of processing, calculating percentages and everything. So here we have the Thrive sample here, and we're ready to go. Okay, at this point in time, I'm going to stop and hop over to my email. Remember, I did a transfer from bottom side. When the data is received by email, it's automatically sent out to you with a link here. And if you click it, it will go and log you in. And now you have a choice of going to 16 samples, or if you use other lab samples, which are any of those, you just can go directly there. If you want to skip this screen, you can just do a check mark here and click it, and then it will automatically take you there. So I'm going to go to 16 samples, and there. Now on the top you see samples, which is the list of samples available. You also see the old menu for those of you who've been using it for a while and prefer the old menu. Lab samples are again from the other lab analysis data, so you can go back and take a look at it. And here's a suggestion and indicates whatever. But generally you end up with my profile. My first suggestion always, to make sure everything has worked for the transfer and the populating of data, is to go into microbiome tree. And the main reason I want to go into it is because it will show you the hierarchy. Bacteria is organized like the animal kingdom, or living creatures. So the root could be all living creatures. The next level down could be fish, could be animals, could be insects. So suppose we're talking fish. Okay, now the fish, the next level down could be a type of fish. For example, salmon. Next level down could be Pacific salmon or Atlantic salmon. Next level down could be a particular type of Pacific salmon, such as pink or sockeye. Next level down could be sockeye salmon caught in Alaska, etc. So anybody belonging to here also belongs to that. This is a particular type of fish, and it's belonged to fish. So the same thing happens with the bacteria. There's a hierarchy down, and as you go down to species and down to strains, in the rare occasion where we have strain information from the test, their behavior becomes more and more specific rather than generic. For example, the thing I keep mentioning to people is E. coli is both good E. coli and bad E. coli. The bad E. coli makes you sick. The good E. coli is in you naturally, and most people have a large amount of it. It's a bad one. Same thing with lactobacillus. There are a few species of lactobacillus which are very unhealthy. So you often have to get down to the species level or even the strain level to find out if something is going to be healthy or unhealthy for you. The higher levels are broad things. It starts saying like, oh, fish is good for you. If it's a puffer fish, which is poisonous, it's not good for you. If it's salmon, probably not bad. If it's oily herring, you may have problems with taste, etc. So, but the main thing is when you get here, you want to take a look here, and what you want to check to make sure that we see percentages here. The percentage here says how is your level compared to other people's level, and we find some things you are very high. 99.5% of people have less of this particular bacteria than you do. That could be an issue for concern. It is abnormal, but we see here also some cases notable pathogens. So just one particular Legionnaire disease, you have a little bit of, but not much. You have other species which could not be identified. So it's an issue you may want to take up with your physician if it has pathogen or other issue. But that is your first quick introduction. Taking a look down there. Sometimes the names are different, as in here we have Pneumocyanus, which is a part of this family. Different name, and without looking at the tree diagram, you may think it's totally different. Names do change as you walk down. So that's the first step, which is just to make sure you successfully got the data in. Now we go back to my profile. My profile, a good starting point is to do a health analysis. And it will take a look down, and from PubMed data, we see how well you match other people. Here, you're sitting at 50th percentile for obesity, and according to statistics, 42.4% of people have obesity. So you are close to having a pattern of bacteria which are seeing people who are obese. Hypertension, U45, prevalence is 47, which means you are again close. Now, if you're sitting up there by 95, and this is about 50, then there's a good chance you have hypertension. Doesn't mean you do, it's not predictive. It just says that, hey, the bacteria is a close match to what we see with people with hypertension. If we go over to some other ones, there you'll see, whoops, we get a very additional link. For example, we think obsessive compulsive 1, 95% 14. Chronic idiopathic constipation is likely, 14% of people have it. You are 96th percentile. You may be suffering from constipation. Osteoporosis, again, you're close but not there. Allergies, you may, just example, I think may have been taken at the end of summer, and allergies act up. COVID is subjective. osteoporosis, hypertension. Again, often you need to take the two factors in consideration. Down below, you have the names of bacteria which identify which we have a specific reason to be concerned about. If you click any of these, they're like this one here. If I click this one, it will go over and voila, it takes you to the PubMed article where it was identified that this was associated with brain fog. And then we have things which are pathogen. Again, the same thing. Citation will take you to where the data is coming from. It's not my made up opinion or my speculation. Everything is coming from studies, and that's what we're trying to do. Is trying to allow you to see that there's a potential problem. Look at the literature, which means you can print off that study, take you to a doctor, and ask them about it. And since it's from a recognized clinical review, chances are he's going to be far more receptive than if you said something like, oh, I saw it on the internet that this is a problem. If you show him the studies, he will listen to you a lot better. And he will probably appreciate it. So again, we saw Legionella being there. And we see that we have a high percentage. Other things are not healthy predictors. High COVID risk, increased COVID risk, etc. Now, the next section down comes from a naturopath based in Tasmania, which is part of Australia. He is well recognized in many other communities, and he has, from dealing with his people, come up with a profile of what an ideal microbiome should do. In keyword, in his opinion, based on the type of people he sees. Since it's Tasmania, Australia, chances are most of them are meat eaters, so there's going to be a bit of a bias towards a profile for meat eaters. Which means if you're vegan or vegetarian, you may have a poor microbiome simply because you happen to be vegetarian. So it gives you his ideal range, your value, and this is ideal or not ideal. For example, Roya, this sample is too low, this one is too high, this one is too low, this one is too high. So it basically gives you a quick overview. Are you healthy or are you not healthy? Okay, let's go back to my profile. We have just gone through one of the many things, and there's a ton of information on the site. So I'm going to double click. There we go. Usually doesn't take that long. Probiotics overview. Gives you using something called KEGG data, which is looking at the DNA level, attempts to looking at what are available retail probiotics, attempt to select which ones looks like it is the best of it. This covers all brands everywhere in the world, which people have been able to provide me information about. So gives you the net impact in terms of changes which they are likely to do on Jason's criteria, the benefit and the risk aspect of it. And now the other ones are based on the enzymes produced compared to the enzymes you're deficient in. Same with the compounds they produce compared to the compounds you're deficient at. Again, this is an experimental, 100% modeled aspect. Sometimes it's good to take a look at it and take a look at what is being suggested. Okay, next thing down, which is a bit more for the nerds, is whether or not your distribution of bacteria at the lowest levels is balanced or biased. In theory, we have these in 10% ones, so basically we should expect all of these numbers to be the same. What we have is we have just particular example. We have the rare percentiles are dominant, and everything else is sort of constant. That means you have a lot of bacteria which has a small representation, which then leave it to other people whether or not that is a good or bad thing. It just simply says, okay, you have a whole bunch of things. Below that we have symptoms, and you can add your symptoms in, which is generally recommended, because by adding them in, the site you make use of the data to try to predict symptoms. We also have our probable symptoms underneath here, which is broken, and I need to investigate that. Okay, you can download your sample in different format if you need to. We have visualization, we have pie charts, we have corona charts, all sorts of fancy visual charts. Corona charts are a bit of fun, but they're not particularly beneficial. What you can do is go in there and say, okay, oh, what do we have? We have bacteroids here, and all I need to do is click on it. And it will now blow it up and allow you to drill down, and you can see the percentage here. So it's a fun thing to play around with, but most of the time, most of the names for most people, you're not going to know what they stand for. We go here, go back to Spira, and we get down. Now you can see all the very fine details in it. So it is a useful type of chart, but it also takes a little bit of effort to be able to use it constructively. It's more what a naturopath or MD may be interested in taking a browse through. Okay, we have special reports for MDs, which is usually if this is not being done with MD, generally skip it. If it is, it will generally try to suggest which antibiotics are the best match to adjust your microbiome. But what you usually want to do is go over to changing my biome site, and there you have multiple ways of picking bacteria. You could pick it by using PubMed studies, or by simply things which we determine are abnormal. I'm going to show you the simplest way, which I usually do in my reviews, which is 1, 2, 3. These three methods are statistical methods of detecting abnormalities, so that we are going to get suggestions based on things which are abnormal using 3 different statistical methods. We're not making use of experience or what's being studied. We are just looking at the bacteria that are there and says which ones are out of whack. And now we just go and just click here. It opens up a new window, says the bacteria that are identified, and gives suggestions below. Suggestions include things to be suggested to take, things you should try to reduce, perhaps eliminate, depending on what they are. And now we can go back, and now I can go to the second way of doing it. And now we see we have more bacteria selected. It's a way which is more sensitive for detecting abnormalities. You have all of them here, and why they were detected, too high or too low. And again, you have the suggestions there. We can go back and use the third way, which is a proprietary method. And now we have even more bacteria selected, which appears to be abnormal. Some cases we'll have notes beside it about them. So in this case, we have several bacteria which are being addressed, which are also pathogenic. And then we have suggestions there. But you got 3 pages of suggestions, and you can even have more. You can have a dozen, 2 dozen pages of suggestions in the same sample. Which way is the right way? We don't know. But we have a intelligent solution to it. This intelligent solution, if you go back to this page, I'm just going to do a refresh. And we have 3 packages of suggestions that have been saved automatically for you, and they are kept safe for 24 hours. And now what you can do is say, okay, we could put all of them together in one big thing and see what everybody agrees about or disagrees about. In which case, we are probably more confident of getting good suggestions. So we can go down here and do a view consensus suggestions. And there we have it. And what we have is how many times did this case, a particular sugar come up as being a take, free, and the net value, which is basically dealing with the confidence of the suggestion, is there. So you can just go down and see, okay, all those are, everybody is agreed you should be taking them. Hey, that's nice. 3 different opinions, and voila, you have consensus, which is good. Now, let's go back and take a look at changing microbiome. You could go and say, okay, I'm going to use Jason's criteria, which is fine. He's an expert, and those are his criteria. We have other sets of criteria here. Get suggestions, and we have 6 bacteria there. And we can go back and look at the consensus basket again. And guess what? Same one is up top, the particular type of sugar, and we have 4 of them. So using Jason's criteria, we come to the same conclusions, which is good. Okay, so that's it. Now, there's a new part to the process, which is when you go and you do the sample, we have added a new feature called nutrients modeled through suggestions. Some of the stuff up above, some of the names, sucralose, sorghum, resistant starch, pectin, etc., are in foods, but you probably don't know what foods they are. You may not be a dietitian, which means, oh, okay, that's nice, but now how in the world do I find out? It's built in. Like, for example, citrulline here. What food is that in? How about vitamin A? What food is that in? If you click here, it will go over and gives the best suggestions of food based on the items which are suggested. And it goes down here and you got your list, and you see that 877 items there. And what you can do is you can sort by descending or in value. For example, avoiding peas, which are robust flavor, is a avoid. Prunes are to avoid. Turnip greens, boiled and drains, are to be avoid. If you want to know why they are avoid, then you can just click on one of them, like this one, and it will show the list of what is in it. In this case, there's one particular item in it, which is lutein, and chances are lutein is one of those things in that list, or way down the list somewhere, which is to be avoided. You don't know what contains it. Turnip greens happens to contain it. So it's worked out for you automatically. Let's go up to the top one. Let's take a look at kidney beans. And there we have the list of everything that's in it. And there are 36 different chemicals in it. If you click here once, twice, and you see 2 things which are in it, things which are starred are the things which are used for selection. Because this particular thing happens to have more of this particular substance than the majority of foods that have some of the substance. So in other words, these are the ones which are the richest of resistant starch. Water is not it's ignored, so there's only one thing. Hey, this is what you should be doing to get resistant starch, and resistant starch will be on your advice list of something to take. All the ones with the same number will usually have the same identical things to it. This one has a little bit less, so let's click here and we do the same thing. And there we have morphine. We have the resistant starch, which is why it's up there, but we also have tin, chloride, and sucrose. Chances are that the sucrose is something to be avoided, which is why it has less value than the other one. So it goes down and you can go there. Generally, things with the same number have the same type of impact, and you could just hop down the list and take a look at something like 25.2. Here, everything with the net value of 25.2. I click right, double click here again. And here is why. You got starch, you have dietary fiber, you have magnesium. All those are some, if not all of them, are factors which are beneficial. And those are things which would have been given in that big long list of 800 items somewhere in there. And all we have done is say, okay, from just 800 items, we go over and look at some 8,000 foods and figure out which one seems to be the best match for what you're trying to do. Helps with the diet. I know people have gone through here and literally use this to plan their weekly diets. And particularly, hey, okay, here are things. I like this. I don't like amaranth. I don't like the taste of it. Triticale, I don't like the taste of it. Quail, I love the taste of it. So I'll go and have some. Or pasta maize flour. Any one of these is beneficial. The ones at the bottom end, let's take a look at one which is down the bottom end, like this one. Raw spinach. Ha ha ha. You have an excuse for not having raw spinach. And one or more of all these chemicals. That's fake. It's this one here, Nutrient. That's probably one of the reasons it's in the void list. Folic acid. So some of these are beneficial, like folic acid may be a take, and this is deparant. So there's a balancing act. Some of these things are good for you, some things are not good for you. And what we try to do is juggle and come up with reasonable suggestions of the best combination. Okay, so that takes us over to food things now. If you go and do more of the food suggestions, you will see there, but you also see that somewhere in here, view consensus, you got this particular case. I have 4 samples, and now I can do the same thing as I did with the raw suggestions. Those raw suggestions are directly based on studies. These are based on the nutrients, which are based on the studies. So it is indirect. And voila, you can go down and take a look at what the best things are. And you can do sorting there. For example, we call lima bean dried, boiled and strained, is basically has a good positive things, allspice ground. So you have the consensus there. So you have 2 sets of consensus reports if you want them. And I wish it was easier to do things, but I mean, we have almost 8,000 items here. The other one will, the direct suggestion will be freaking 800 items, lots of information, and it will take time to figure out what you're going to do with it. But at least you are going to be acting on on what you take from your microbiome data and from available studies. Okay, let's go back. So we have additional things suggested probiotics, which is a computation. It now goes and attempts to calculate. All of these are available in some product in the world. Some are easy, like the E. coli is available in at least 2 products. One is Mutaflor, which is, and then one is Semaphore 2. And then you have things like Bacillus and different types of Bacillus. And you can just go down the list and figure out which ones are easily available at a reasonable cost for you. Somewhere, Colostrum butyriticum, and it's just sitting there. You can go all the way to the bottom, and there. And how these are calculated is it calculates out the enzymes that your microbiome is producing, identify ones which you are underproducing compared to everybody else's production for the same enzyme. And then it looks at the probiotics and say, okay, which enzymes do these probiotics produce? And how much does it produce? And can we use this as effectively a supplement to provide the missing probiotics? So that is where we're getting that concept from. We also have oats, etc. We have acne and everything, so you can go in and do it. And there's a bug there. I need to figure that one out. So that's it. There we have special studies which, if you happen to have a particular condition, for example, a COVID long hauler is there. If you happen to be the case, these are rough match. These try matching by similarity. Or, for example, ME without IBS, get suggestions. And you get suggestions. It's 118 bacteria which bring flagged as being too low, too high. And you have your suggestions here. And they will be added into your consensus. This one is still deemed to be experimental. I'm not totally happy with the results. All the data is coming from people upload the samples where they have marked these as their symptoms. So it is true citizen science, but not absolutely there. And we have some statistics down here on where these things are, how much data we have from there, from which labs, etc. And if it's zero here, it simply means we have not reached a threshold of samples to be able to come up with suggestions. For example, if you're dealing with Ombre Labs, we don't have enough people from Ombre Labs who marked COVID long hauler. We do have enough people from Biosite. So the zero here simply means we haven't had enough samples annotated with that one. And then we have research features, which is for more nerds, dealing with all sorts of fine detail. We have multiple samples, so if you have 2 samples, like this one, and you can go and compare the samples and see what has gone and changed between the samples. Very helpful if you do a sample, do suggestions for 2 months, take another sample, to identify, have you actually improved? And if so, where have you improved? Because you may have improved in one area and no traction in another area. The fact that you improve in one area should encourage you to keep going there. And so we have that, and that's basically a reasonably good introduction to it. We have the old menus, which is far more archaic, and it's basically the same thing, more awkward to use in my opinion, which is why I deprecate it. And there we go. So that's basically it. Hopefully you will walk through, take your time, and there's lots of choices here. I should make one note. Up at the top, public display, if you take a look for references here, you see just 3 things. But if you change it up to advanced, go to references, still see 3 things, but you'll see more choices and some new choices showing up here. Again, a lot of these items are technicals, which means you need to acquire knowledge to be able to use them correctly. So the public level is very low, simple, should not overwhelm you with too much information. Okay, at this point of time, I'll shut up and encourage you to explore.